And we're live with his Jeffness and his ISTP brother.
No, you're not.
No, that and isn't there. A Homicide, the season 4 finale, called Work Related, and it was written by Tom Fontana and directed by Jean de Seconza. You know, I don't know how to pronounce that person's name, so whatever way I say it's going to be wrong. So I go for the overdramatic French pronunciation. The TV.com recap, because it's terrible, and was obviously written by someone who didn't pay attention to the episode. But I will read the David B226 Morris review, because it's a little bit better written. And he says, well, first of all, I'll say that it was broadcast on NBC May 17th, 1996. So it's episode 22 and final episode of season 4. All right, so to put a character's life in danger as a cliffhanger is nothing new. Indeed, Homicide had done as much to 3 of its detectives over a year ago. But somehow, especially if the character is central to the show, you know they'll come out all right. What Tom Fontana did in Work Related was something far more radical and daring. So much so that when the episode first aired, many viewers and a few TV critics were sure that Frank Pembleton had died, even though his actual fate was far more precarious than merely dying. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about Work Related is that for the first 40 minutes, it seems like just another episode of Homicide. Pembleton's wife has had a daughter, but for Frank, this is almost business as usual. He's back at work investigating a high-profile but ordinary double shooting at a restaurant. Tim seems happier about the birth than Frank does, and for maybe the first time invites himself over to Frank's house to see his baby. Lewis, meanwhile, is back from his honeymoon. Fortunately, it seems that his marriage has already turned sour. He and his wife appeared to have separated after they did not consummate their marriage. Meldrick throws himself into his work by investigating a literal red ball, a stone whodunit in which the victim died when a bowling ball dropped from an overpass and through his windshield. G is going through some anxiety of his own involving his shooting of Raymond DeSassy. The death weighs heavily on his conscience, so much that Howard will exercise sergeant's prerogative and erase his name from the board. All of this is traditional Homicide, but there is no indication that anything special is going to happen. Then Pembleton and Bayliss learn that a supposed witness to the shooting was actually an
Sounds cut out. A supposed witness to a shooting was the last thing I heard.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay. At what point did my sound go out?
I think it was as soon as you said a supposed witness to a shooting.
Okay. The supposed witness to the shooting was actually an accessory. They call him for an interrogation, and we witness one of the better box sessions that we've seen all season. Tim and Frank slowly and musically tearing holes in the suspect's story. Then, literally mid-question, Frank starts to seize and shake, and he collapses on the suspect. Several disconnected minutes follow until the paramedics arrive and diagnose a possible CVA, a stroke. The intense pressure that has been around Pembleton almost since we first met him has caused a vessel in his head to burst. The squad is understandably shocked. Munch in particular seems unsettled, but the most upset person, possibly even more so than Mary Pembleton, is Bayliss. For the last act of the episode, he seems to be wandering in a daze as he realizes what may be happening to his partner. We also finally see the level of Tim's devotion to Frank. When G tries to get him to go back to his interview, Tim flatly refuses. He is not leaving his partner, and that is that. Tim also expresses the clear difference between his and Pembleton's approach to the job. He obsesses over why a person was killed, while Frank is only focused on the how. He knows that he is good murder police, but he is honest enough to admit that he doesn't know whether he will be without Frank. The first half of Season 5 will focus on Bayliss proving that to us and himself. The squad goes back to work. Russert and Munch find out who the killer is in Frank's shooting, only to find the killer has committed suicide. Lewis decides to abandon his search for his killer and continues to demonstrate his skewed priorities. But Tim, Mary, and G wait until the doctors have finished operating on Frank for news on his condition, and it's not what we expected. There may have been some brain damage, possibly some paralysis, but right now Frank is in a coma, and the doctors aren't sure if he will ever recover. Fontana has not killed Frank, he has trapped him inside his own head. This may have been the best plot twist that the creators of Homicide ever did, and it is a great finale to what has been, for the most part, a great 6 months of television. Admittedly, it doesn't give a lot for several of its actors to do, particularly Melissa Leo and Isabella Hoffman, but Brower and Secor retain the level of excellence they have all season. Brower would get his first Emmy nomination after the season ended. Secor deserved one just as much. Because work-related seems so ordinary in its first half, the audience is absolutely floored by the second half, which is why I consider this one of the best cliffhangers in television history and one of the best episodes in the series run. My score, 10. So that's what he says. Mr. Ben, what do you say?
Well, it was good. I'll be disappointed if Frank comes back and is the same. Because it's like, well, what was the point of that then? Him having a stroke, if he comes back and is the same. So if he's different, then it'll be worthwhile.
Well, without spoiling too much, I can say that definitely is a lasting effect.
Yeah, because otherwise it doesn't.
They don't just come back and be like, "Woo, glad we got that stroke thing out of the way. Now back to work." You know, it wasn't that cheap a plot device.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like, I want some repercussions.
Yeah,
change.
There will be.
Because
this kicks off, a series of episodes I think is some of the best that the show ever did, which is why, other than seasons 1 and 2, which I kind of lumped together as all one season because it was only 13 episodes. Besides that, season 5 is probably my favorite, and mainly for the earlier part of the season than the last part.
The line that literally made me laugh out loud because it was so true was, I think it was Bayliss saying, "What the hell is a CBA?"
Yeah.
And I've written here, I think Bayliss is an ESFJ. I think you think he's an ISFJ.
Mm-hmm.
Just that I think that because when he wants to, he can use a lot of force, and that's one of the things in socionics. But the audience doesn't want to know about typology.
Well, I mean, obviously there's a lot of similarities between those two types, so they're probably the closest to each other without being exactly the same type. So as we've discussed in Kersey theory, people can kind of shift between roles.
Yeah.
So my feeling is that Bayliss his primary role would be protector, but that he could shift into provider when necessary.
Yeah. I like I think the best scene for me was Bayliss talking about how Frank's mind works.
Mm-hmm.
That was my favorite scene. Oh yes, I remember in previous episodes, maybe the previous season, that when they would go in and they thought that someone was going to have a gun, they wore those white bulletproof jackets. They didn't have Russet, and I don't know what the woman's called again. I've forgotten her name. I call her Holland because I don't want to say what that means because that would make me sound like Donald Trump. The woman with the ginger hair.
Howard?
Howard, yes, Howard. They didn't wear the bulletproof jackets. Do you remember
they at least didn't show him putting it on. They might have had it underneath, but...
Okay. Right.
That is a detail that they didn't...
Yeah, and did that bit, and you mentioned something from... Is it David B2K? What is it? What's his full name?
B226. Yeah, Morris.
B226 Morris.
Mm-hmm.
There must have been a lot of other Morrises. All right. So what was this when he talks about? I think he was talking about Lewis, and he said his skewed priorities.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what he meant by that. I mean,
Right.
the only thing I can figure is that he was agreeing with Kellerman when Kellerman said he should go home and focus on trying to fix his marriage as opposed to trying to find the bowling ball killer that they would never find.
Right. I suppose the next things I'll say will sort of like be specific, and and of course you're welcome to jump in as we go through these slides. But those were the things.
Scary looking burger.
Yes, especially when make it female as well. And it looks like it's puckering up.
Yeah, indicated with lipstick, eyeliner, and a bow. Makes a female hamburger.
And the kind of mini skirts.
Made out of lettuce.
Although wearing flats. Oh no, it disappeared. Where did it go? It's gone weird. There we go. Right, and then we've got, I think these are two. Oh, something's popped up. I've got to close that. Right. So these are the two fellas who just died. Right. I always keep asking this, but because I like to know, were these in previous episodes? Parsons, O'Brien, and Gertz.
Not that I remember.
Right.
The last couple of episodes didn't really feature Pembleton as much, so presumably those were the cases he was working on while Lewis and Kellerman were handling stuff with Luther Mahoney and the Muslims and all that stuff.
My external hard drive failed, and so I had to re-download the episode, and I noticed how these episodes were out of order, and I think they promoted the Muslim episode much further into the middle.
It was the second to last one broadcast, yeah.
And I was wondering about this, where it's like they suddenly mention him being married, but at the beginning of this episode, and I was wondering, as they were going through the episode, did they get slightly confused with the timeline? Well, not confused, but slightly disjointed. I mean, they would have known, wouldn't they?
Well, that aspect actually made more sense than doing them in production order because they had just had the wedding episode before this one. So that aspect seemed like it fit better.
Yeah, but was the wedding episode directly before this? I thought there was one called Scene of the Crime.
Right, I said broadcast order.
Right.
The Scene of the Crime was actually broadcast several weeks before that. It was even before the Map of the Heart episode.
Right. And was Lewis in that episode?
Which episode?
The
Scene of the Crime?
Yeah, the one we saw.
Yeah, remember it was him and Kellerman with the Muslim security force or whatever.
Yeah, because he just said back from your honeymoon. It's like 2 weeks or something. I mean, how much have we gone in between episodes? How much time has passed?
Are you asking me, or is that hypothetical?
Well, I don't know.
Like rhetorical.
Well, I don't. Okay.
I didn't write for the show.
Okay.
So I don't know what they intended with that.
Okay. Right, and of course, I thought she acted very well in the scene towards the end. I thought she had a very, very good reaction when the doctor says he doesn't know. Like this bit here, I thought she acted that was very convincing. I initially thought when Frank had his fit that he was putting it on.
Oh. He was doing an act to get the lawyer to break.
Yeah.
or the witness to confess.
Yeah, initially, because he wasn't. Because it's a difficult thing to act well.
And that's probably why, there's kind of a delayed reaction from Tim, is that he probably
Yeah.
thought the same thing at first, because he has done so many acts in the box that he probably thought the same thing for the first, little bit. And then all of a sudden he's like, wait a minute, there's something seriously happening, Ron.
So what I would have done is I would have shot it where the reaction on Tim, where Frank's doing that, and then Tim smiles, and then he would have a look of realization. Oh, something is up here. There's that little shame.
That's one directorial choice. I agree. I would have done slightly differently, because the last shot you see of Bayliss before that is just the back of his head. But before that, he had sort of a knowing grin on his face, and I would have liked to have seen more of the change in Tim's face as opposed to going straight to the distressed look.
Yeah,
because the lawyer obviously has a much stronger reaction initially from him doing that.
I like that character because Russell. He's a good. I don't know if there was a mistake on the part of the actor playing Bayliss. I think I don't know if it's just my hearing. Well, at one point, maybe he said Russet by mistake, but my hearing cannot really be trusted.
Yeah, it's close. Russum, though, is the lawyer's name. But yeah, actually, my favorite moment for him was later when he comes back and at that point says, tell them whatever they want to know, because I got you a great deal. So he's more satisfied with himself getting the deal that he's just like, whatever, now you can tell him anything.
All right. And we've got the bowling ball thing, the literal
red ball.
ball. No blood on it though.
Well, it's hard to tell with that color ball.
Or on the. It doesn't need to be blood.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, I mean, if the ball hit his head and just bounced off really fast, it wouldn't necessarily have any blood on it.
Yeah. Oh, and this reaction shot from Kellerman about consummating the marriage. And then I think we've seen Lugo, haven't we? We've seen an episode with Lugo in.
Well, right, Lugo was the radio host guy, but what that shows is Lugo's in black now, which says that at some point, Howard's in between the episodes, Howard solved who actually killed Lugo, or at least got a confession from somebody, because it wasn't DeSassy.
Right.
So maybe that other guy that said it was DeSassy, maybe he really did do it, and he eventually got a confession from him.
Right. So what happened with this one? Yeah, go on.
I was just saying, by the end of that episode, they had not.
Yeah.
At least they didn't say anything about they'd gotten a confession from him, so it made it seem like they still didn't know who killed Lugo.
Yeah. And maybe 2 weeks has passed because the baby looked a little bit older.
Yeah, well, that was the implication. Yeah. I mean, obviously that Lewis had come back from his honeymoon, so.
Now, what about this Gillies one? This was a previous episode as well. That was shown, I believe. Gillies? Is that right, or am I?
I think it was probably Giles, but I don't know.
Oh, right, Giles. Yeah, sorry.
But I don't recall. Off the top of my head.
I think Galino was one. I don't know if other episodes we've seen. Now, this is nice from a directorial point of view, but it must be a pain in the arse to put the camera up there when you're shooting on location.
Since they use all handheld cameras, somebody had to be up on the ladder, obviously.
I thought this actress was very convincing.
That was a funny scene.
Yeah, and she was like,
shows how a homicide will show that people that the cops are talking to are not always cooperative. It's sort of the anti-dragnet where everybody always answers questions, factually and quickly, and in this it's she's being obstinate the whole time.
Now, what do you think? What do you think her best fit temperament is there, Jeff?
I don't know.
To me, she seemed a very likely candidate to be an artisan.
Yeah, could be. Didn't really see enough of her to know.
Well, just sort of like the way she carried herself, the body
Yeah,
language.
initially
Things like that.
that would probably be my guess. Yeah.
Right, and then so we've got what have we got here? We've got all these, and again, ones that have not been in previous episodes.
Well, in case you ask me again, I can say that one thing I do remember is that under Bayliss, those first names from 3 through 9 are all the sniper victims. So.
Wow. Yeah.
And I remember we even had our discussion when we did that episode as to why the first case of the year was 3 as opposed to 1. That they're the day shift, so the first 2 murders happened overnight before they got there.
Ah, right. Okay, gotcha. And that's on the other side of the board, isn't it?
Right.
Right. Well, look. Right, Caswell. I think did we see Caswell in the previous episode? I think we.
Don't know.
Right, Slayton, Galeno, Reginald. Well, we won't get sort too much in the minutiae.
Yeah.
And this is another shot that's difficult to set up. Well, not that. I mean, they put the camera guy on his back.
Yeah.
It's not that difficult. Easier than a crane shot. Yeah, I do like this character.
Likely the baby was not actually in the crib with the camera guy while they shot that. Just a guess, but I'm thinking that's probably.
I like it when this guy's in because it makes it harder for Pembleton.
Yep. Although I have to say that something I was reading pointed out that in itself is actually unrealistic. That basically once someone has lawyered up, as they say in the cop business, the cops don't talk to them anymore. They don't interrogate suspects with their lawyer sitting there. It's not something that gets done because at that point it's turned over to the lawyers. So a prosecuting attorney, like an assistant DA or whatever, would talk to him with the lawyer present, but the homicide detectives wouldn't be doing it that way.
Right. This is the only time in the whole series that I would maybe question the acting in this bit, because the rest of the time he's been unimpeachable. This actor, Andre Braugher, but I just thought it was a bit because it's hard to reference. It's hard to know what it would be like. I mean, I've had seizures in the past.
I would say that was why I think it's a good acting, because I would say unless you've seen someone having a stroke and are trying to say, well, he didn't do it right.
Oh, I'm not saying it's bad.
To me, it was very effective because it was very sudden, and he was convincing in the way that it just, happened out of nowhere, and it didn't seem like this kind of dramatic, it didn't seem like a soul deed from Horns of Nymon or something. Where
God,
he's milking it over the top.
Oh dear, I hated that. That it was that was where it just. We won't talk about that too much, but that was where Doctor Who just got a little bit too silly.
Right. Yeah, and contrasting that with this is this was just long enough to be shocking in its drama, but not where it was milked to be this extended, scene like he was going to go, oh, woe is me, or something,
Yes. Yeah. But what I saw just saying is up until now he's been faultless. 10 out of 10. I'll just give this a 9 out of 10 for this one. So I'm just trying to be tough on him because he's good. Right. Right. And then we go into the sequence where I tried to get all of the bits in the weird sequence. So here we go. Let's go through them all. Now we use this in Blake 7, the Miralon thing, where you get a mirror and you warp it, and then you record the mirror, and then that way you can bend the face. So, of course, some of these are probably his parents and stuff. So, like I said, like the Miralon thing, where they would do that in Blake 7. Then they just warp the mirror. And then, of course, some of these are previous cases. I remember seeing the white glove murder as one of the...
Yeah, and we've got various Catholic symbols you meant to show, like his church upbringing and school and all that. Yeah, I'm guessing
that's parents. Do you think that's his parents?
Supposed to be his parents, yeah.
Yeah. And then I don't know if that's meant to be. Is that meant to be a younger Frank?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Because I sort of recognise a smile. And then this looks vintage. I thought at this point, oh, did they get that from Hill Street Blues or something? Is that what the cars were like then? And then that was a bit older. And then this weird bit with the Porky Pig, I think it is on.
Yep.
I didn't actually know because I was like too busy taking
Probably
the grabs.
meant to be like childhood memories, like him watching cartoons or whatever.
Right. Right, and then that's a gun, folks. It's just it didn't focus that well. And then right, and then you've got GIs in the background, and I'm thinking, how far back is he remembering? Again, the Jesus thing. Oh, we got the White Gloves murder.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know what that, some kind of 60s thing. Oh, because they did say his age. They said he's 34.
Yeah, I think there was a flash of like stuff that was supposed to represent like something he might have actually seen on television as opposed to witnessing. It was like so it was TV footage of like segregation stuff, you know, and like the versus the black people or whatever, that kind of thing.
So just doing some quick maths. He was born in 62 then, so he would have some memories of the late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and then there's that bit where he saluted Cressetti.
Yep.
And then a ticking clock, directorial. And then I saw this bit and I thought, no, I don't think so. Because how he wouldn't be able to see that. Right. He wouldn't be able to, that was a bit weird.
Well, I mean, you can have visions of yourself.
Yeah, but I was thinking, have they really got the balls to kill him off? Because that's what they do in Game of Thrones, you know.
So you were just saying, I don't think so, in terms of you didn't think that was really happening. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they wouldn't like kill him off. Also, yeah. I think I heard you remember saying that something like he won an Emmy in later seasons.
Right. Yeah, he was nominated after this season. He finally won the Emmy after season 6.
Right. Right. That means he doesn't die then.
Well, you don't know that necessarily. It could be that he won an Emmy as Ghost Frank.
Yes, that would be good.
Haunts the homicide unit.
A bit like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
That would have been better for those newer Star Wars movies. Had Obi-Wan Kenobi just come back, bitching the whole time about how they're doing everything wrong.
You know, he used to start. I think the tagline for episode 1 was "Every saga has a beginning," and I thought for a while it was every saga has to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But actually, it was very popular amongst very young children. Everybody hates Jar Jar, but he was like the second most popular character amongst under 10s.
Yeah, I never hated him. I mean, as opposed to
He fit in quite well the rest of that mediocre movie.
Yeah, basically that's what I was, trying to say is that he wasn't any, he wasn't decidedly worse than anything else. Although there is somebody who on YouTube posted an edit of that movie that doesn't take Jar Jar out, but it changes his dialogue to being like entirely like a foreign language with subtitles instead of having him speak in the way he did.
Yeah.
But anyway, enough about Star Wars.
I thought this was a nice choice by good writer. Of course, this. I mean, in the script that would be point of view shot, but it can't. It's not really his point of view because his eyes are closed or he's unconscious.
Right.
Yeah. But it depends if it was moving or not. There's some other guy on the other side, so that's fair enough. Right. Cartoons. Look Tech Fiber Optics. Oh. Right. Oh yeah, that was a bit him saying he got a great deal. I thought his reaction was something like, "Oh, I can't be bothered with this. I know you've done it. Just go forward," because he.
Because he already made the deal, so he's not going to say anything that's going to get him worse charged. So he does basically you can tell him everything.
Right. Well,
and when I saw the scene where the guy who hung himself had the note that said "I'm not a slacker," Morgan, when seeing that, was like, "Yeah, he wasn't. That rope held pretty well."
Right. Right. I think remember Parsons. Yeah. Yeah, we've done all that. Again, directors love shooting through stuff.
Yep.
Michael Ferguson used to do that in Doctor Who. He's shooting through stuff. I like this bit with the coffin.
Yeah, we figured you might. I was at the time thinking, this is the only weaknesses in the episode to me, or the kind of weirdities put in like that, and I was like, yeah, Ben will probably like this part because it's weird.
Yeah, but it's like that must probably be like though for somebody who has had a stroke that they feel that they're like trapped inside.
Oh yeah, I understand what the point of it was.
Yeah. Then now Herb Levinson, is he like one of the producers or something, or related, or?
I don't think so. He could be related to Barry Levinson.
Familiar. Pardon?
Yeah, I think you asked me about that a while back, and I said that as far as I know, he's not one of the producers, but he's
right.
Could very well be related to Barry.
Right. So.
Because he's played more than one bit part.
I don't think there's really much to say about it because like the main point of the episode is Frank's stroke, and then the other continuing theme is with Lewis and his wife, and it's like, well, that's something else where I'm thinking, well, what's the point of that unless something comes of it?
Well, there's a lot of things that one of the things I love about this episode in the context of the series with things that I know are to come is that even little details that show up in this episode, you'll find out for the reason for them later, like the parts where Brody is filming people on the camera, for instance, or recording people, I guess I should say, because it's not film, but But yeah, like the shot that he has of Russert where she tells him go record somebody else or whatever,
yeah, we know he likes Russert.
Those little elements will come back in the future. And again, that's what I love about Homicide is the details. And there's a lot of a lot of that in this episode. The little bits. There's more symbolism in this episode than some previous ones. You know, a lot of the stuff, not only about Frank, but then you have the bowling ball with Lewis and all that. So there's a little bit kind of more layers to it. But I thought everybody's performance was really believable. Everybody was sort of, and like Morris's review said, you sort of have this feeling like things are just sort of, you know, knocking along as usual, and then you have this thing that kind of gets, like the bowling ball, metaphorically dropped from on top onto everything that you know, seems like, I think that sort of the symbolism was it's this ordinary object that then, you know, you drop it, you put it in a context of dropping it off of a bridge, and all of a sudden it becomes a deadly weapon. And in the episode, you have everybody's kind of going about their business, and then you have Frank Stroke kind of drops the ball, and everybody is shattered by it, so to speak, especially Bayliss.
Yeah, we had some STP humor with the buying him a box of 500 condoms. They're insane, all sizes and colors.
Mm-hmm.
Right. What else?
I liked the fact that you know, there was callbacks to previous things, like G shooting the DeSassia guy, and you know, being preoccupied by that, and you know, having the little exchange between him and Frank. Like you saw these things throughout the episode where Frank was the one basically saying, these things aren't a big deal. These are what happens always, you know. And this is funny because I relate to that so much because I've told you before, working with the Guardians as I do, it's like they're always, you know, getting upset about these same things that happen over and over again. And I'm like, why are you acting like this is something new? It happens all the time. And Frank is having the exact same reaction to the Guardians in this episode. He's telling Tim, babies are born every day. Why is this such a big deal? He's telling G, like, the bosses are always putting pressure on you, and the media is always trying to get a story. Why are you acting like that's a big deal? And then ultimately it's like a big deal does happen to him. That's not, you know, at the end. So
I think that's also him trying to convince himself of that.
True. There's deflection where it's like he is feeling the pressure of things, but he's sort of deflecting it and saying, well, you know, this is like everything else. So why is everybody else? And
you saw that the way he talked to his baby when he was alone.
Yeah,
so how much did
his fear comes out. Yeah, and
yes,
we talked about that before, like in the scene at the beginning of this season that he had on the rooftop with Bayliss, where
Sniper.
he talked about, being afraid, you know, to bring a child into the world or whatever. So, you know, that's been a recurring theme with Frank, is that he cares about how he'd be as a father and how his child, you know, the conditions for his child, and his, you know, seeing every day from his job the worst of people and what they can do to each other.
Right. Oh yeah. I also, even before Frank had his stroke, that was a good scene in the box with Russell.
Mm-hmm.
Because like other scenes in the box, I've been a little bit disappointed by of late. And as David B226 Morris, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I got it right for once. Not much else to say, except, again, the standard of dialogue, the style of dialogue is not like what it was in the first season or two, where it does seem to be snappier to me. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it was wittier in the first one or two seasons. So, for instance, like Lewis would have a lot of good lines in the first season or two, but that might just be like the fact that we're going to make so many episodes and I've not got as much time to craft them. I don't know, or changing in writers.
Yeah, and I think overall, Lewis and Corsetti had a little bit better chemistry, though I think over time, he and Kellerman will get better. Like in the next season, really kind of, there'll be a lot of good Lewis and Kellerman scenes and the kind of relationship as partners and friends. So they're not quite there yet. As far as you could tell at the beginning of the show, there was already that chemistry with him and Cressetti.
Right. Okay. I've not got anything else to say apart from the fact that I think that Frank's a very well written character overall, and he definitely shows things that are consistent with the artisan temperament, but they also go beyond the stereotype of the artisan temperament. And then there's also things that are specific to him and sort of racial issues and that lot. So he's well written, and I think you've said before that he was based on a real person that was in the book. Yeah,
I mean, all the initial characters were at least loosely based on the real detectives of the Homicide Unit.
So how much of him was based on the? Because you've read the book or heard the audio book.
It depends on who you ask. The character, I mean, the person he was based on, Harry Edgerton himself, said that there wasn't a whole lot, that he thought he was pretty different from the Pembleton character, but other people have said that he was, he had some biographical similarities in terms of a New York upbringing.
Was he also black? The guy that
yes.
Was...
Right. Some of the lines that were said about Pembleton early on were directly out of the book, like the stuff that Felton said about him thinking he's better than us because he listens to Emmylou Harris. That was specifically a line from the book that the real detective Felton was based on. Cade actually said about him. So, and the real story that they didn't go into on the show was that the reason why Pembleton was seen as like the loner cop who didn't have a partner and didn't, was because when he started in the Homicide Unit, he was actually only supposed to be there temporarily because he was working with like a federal agency of some kind. So his partner was basically was a series of federal agents working on a specific case. That was like this big case that they were working on. So that was why he had the reputation of, he was this guy that only works on these important cases, and he didn't want to handle routine stuff, which is the stuff Felton said about him at the beginning. Like, I'm getting to work with the Frank Pembleton on just some dead guy, So all that stuff was based on real life. A lot of the personality of Pembleton, though, was Andre Braugher and Tom Fontana as a writer, but what Braugher put into him as an actor, was kind of, his stamp on the character, and Fontana's, way of giving him more of a personality as opposed to, necessarily that matching the real guy.
Yeah, it's just like, he's good at that. Let's give him more of that. He can do that. Let's stretch him a bit.
Right,
more.
And Landsman, the guy that Munch was based on. I mean, a lot of what is Munch was Belzer's, take, whereas the actual thing of Landsman as a character in the book is he's this wisecracking guy. And so you get a comedian to play him, and then you end up with it's Belzer as the wisecracking guy, but is what the actual stuff that he talked about in his personality may not have had much relation to Landsman.
Yeah, I think maybe in the previous season they'll try and work more stuff in from Belzer, more of his acts, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the very beginning, it was like his lines were almost evenly divided between lines straight out of the book and lines out of Belzer's stand-up act. Like the things he said about the Irish and the potato famine and all that, and when did the Romans become the Italians and that stuff that was from the first episode. That was all just Belzer's stuff.
Yeah, so used most of his act up, and there's not got much material left.
Yeah.
So, I've not got anything else to say, Jeff. I'm sort of like disgusted.
So, what's your rating then?
My rating. I'll give it about an 8.
Okay. And I will give it a 10,
Ooh.
which I believe, if I recall correctly, was only my second 10 for season 4. I think the other one I gave it to was The Hat, and I think that The Hat is probably still my favorite episode, though this one's pretty close. But that one to me was almost like perfection for a Homicide episode, just in the way that it had a cool but funny story, all the people and the characters pursuing their own angles, and then having the setup, and then the hopes come crashing down. That was the one where Gaffney got promoted over G, and all that stuff happened. So there was a lot of just really homicide-y stuff in that. If that makes any sense. So that was overall, I think, my favorite episode of the season. But this one's pretty close, because I think this one obviously was overall more dramatic with what happened with Frank. I could have done without a little bit of the weirdness, but that was really the only flaw to me. The rest of it is really well done. So I thought it was a good finale for the season, and kicks off a series of really good episodes going into season 5.
Right.
So join us next time for, I suppose, a season 4 and review video if we do that.
Right. It's bye from me, folks.
Bye-bye.